to Informed Sources on News Channel 3, where we talk about the week's big stories with local people in the know. I'm your host, Greg Hurst. Thanks for joining us. In a moment, I'll introduce our panel, but first, here's tonight's hot topics. With less than 2 weeks to go until the August 4th election, campaigns are kicking into high gear across the state of Tennessee, and that includes the 3 Democrats in the running in the gubernatorial primary. Whoever wins on the 4th will face Governor Bill Lee in November. So, who are these candidates? We'll be taking a closer look. Now, we'll also be discussing big changes coming to the Tennessee Attorney General's office. Longtime Attorney General Herbert Slattery will be stepping down at the end of his term, and the Tennessee Supreme Court gets to name his replacement. We'll talk about just how unusual our Attorney General selection process is compared to the rest of the country and who the justices might be looking for. And then later, we'll delve into the controversy surrounding the Shelby County Clerk's Office over delays in processing new license plates and what impact that might have over the election. Now, before we begin our discussion, let's introduce tonight's panel. I'm joined by Pastor Dr. Keith Norman, former chairman of the Shelby County Democratic Party, and then Chris Tudor, who's the former chairman of the Shelby County Republican Party. Gentlemen, thank you both. Appreciate you being here. We know you'll have some great insight and perspective on these races that are coming up.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having me.
Good seeing you both. All right, first up tonight, we are talking about the governor's race here in Tennessee. Popular Republican Governor Bill Lee is running unopposed in the upcoming GOP primary, but there are 3 candidates running for the Democratic nomination. Now, 2 of them are from Memphis, including New Chicago community activist Carnita Atwater and City Councilman B.J. Smiley, Jr. They're being challenged by Dr. Jason Martin from the Nashville area, who's been a fierce critic of Governor Lee and his administration's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. But no matter who wins the Democratic nomination, Governor Lee is favored to win a second term in a state that has shifted really toward the GOP in the last several election cycles. So, Pastor Norman, let's start with you.
Sure.
What chance do Democrats have in this race?
Well, we have to always say there is a chance. I'm a staunch Democrat, so I have to always give a nod to my party. But it really takes organizing long before the election to win. When you look at what's going on in Georgia, for instance, with Stacey Abrams, this movement where Stacey is gaining ground and could possibly shift Georgia to a Democratic gubernatorial, election and outcome, it started many, many years ago. She's raising greater funds in Georgia. So in Tennessee, for us to have that same impact, it's going to take a few years of hard work on the ground, awareness, informing people of what it takes and how many numbers we have to get out to really shift the state. Obviously, Memphis is a strong Democratic hold. Sure. We'd have to have over 65% of the electorate here to really come out and vote strongly in a Democratic race. And then we'd have to join with Nashville and Chattanooga and the other parts. Tennessee is largely 95 counties, and many of those counties are smaller and tend to vote Republican. It's the large counties that can make the difference.
Chris, any chance the governor loses this race?
I don't think so. You never say never in politics, but for 2 reasons. As he just pointed out, this is a very Republican state. Governor Lee won comfortably in his first go-around, and I think the second reason is that he's broadly popular. If you look just at the metrics, Tennessee's doing really well in terms of jobs, in terms of education funding, in terms of population growth. There's been movement, and all of it's in positive directions, and I think that is going to be reflected in this election. I think he's broadly popular among Republicans, and I think he'll also get some crossover support because he's been successful.
You know, when you look at these Democratic candidates, all 3 of them are known locally, but none of them really have any statewide name recognition. How difficult does that make it in a race that's statewide?
It's very difficult. Tennessee is a hard state to run for a statewide election. I mean, it's a long state. Right. You've got to travel 8 to 10 hours across the state to really just get your name out there. JB has done a great job in this area. He has worked hard. I think he will probably get the nod, but Dr. Jason Martin is doing a great job in his area in Nashville. He has some strong endorsements, but it's a single issue that he's running on, and you have to expand your base on the issue. And then our community activist, Carnita Atwater. I admire her, the work that she's done, but name recognition is going to be extremely important to make this work.
You mentioned J.B. Smiley. We'll talk about all 3 candidates independently in just a moment, but are you surprised that there aren't any more high-profile candidates running in this Democratic primary here? Maybe you have Harold Ford Jr., maybe you have Congressman Jim Cooper, who decides, I've been up there in Washington for 20 years and I want to come back to Nashville. Are you surprised that that hasn't happened?
Frankly, I'm not. And the reason is I think the last chance that Democrats had to, the last real chance they had to win a statewide election was the Senate election between Senator Blackburn and former Governor Phil Bredesen. You had an excellent candidate that had universal name ID, a ton of money, a moderate profile, and a lot of people thought that race was going to be close. They poured tons of money into it, and I think he still lost by, at the end of the day, double digits. So it doesn't surprise me that there's not a higher profile Democrat running, because the gap between R and D is so wide in Tennessee.
For different reasons, I'm not surprised. One of the things is that those candidates really do a lot of research before they throw their name in the hat. They're going to make sure that the numbers favor them and give them at least a slight chance of winning. I do think that Carl Dean ran a good race as the mayor of Nashville when he did challenge for the gubernatorial race, and I thought that was a positive outcome. A little more hard work, a little more fundraising, we could have made a greater difference. So I would say that Dean and Bredesen ran good races during that time.
All right, let's talk about these two candidates. You mentioned J.B. Smiley. He's the young attorney, the city councilman. What do you think his chances are, and what are his strengths?
I think J.B.'s strength is that he is the candidate that has a diverse platform. He talks to a lot of different issues. He doesn't just have a single issue that he's running in his platform. He's going to appeal to voters across the state. He's been actively pursuing support in other areas, and I admire that work that he's doing. I think that gives him the nod or the edge in this particular Democratic race.
Okay, you're the Democrat on our panel. Let's talk about community activist Carnita Atwater. She says she wants to put people back in politics. Will that resonate at all?
That always resonates, especially among Democrats, but you have to bring more definition to that particular platform. You've really got to say how we're going to do it and what we're going to do. I think Carnita has a place in politics. I don't know if she's ever sought public office before, but I do believe that she has a place in politics. It just may not be the governor's race on her first election.
And you mentioned Nashville physician Dr. Jason Martin.
Yeah.
What chance does he have? I know he was critical of the governor during the pandemic and how the governor handled it.
I think when he came out, he had a resonating chance to really get in there. Obviously, COVID has changed a lot. It's morphed. It's even swinging back up again, but people's attention is not on that issue as much as it has been. And so Dr. Martin would have had to diversify and broaden his platform.
What do Republicans have to do to not get complacent in all of this?
Got to work. And I think your point about the last gubernatorial election, I think Mayor Dean ran a statewide campaign that was effective. But look, we're entering a cycle that's very Republican favorable. It looks like there's going to be maybe even a red wave. I think a lot of Republicans are going to turn out because, mainly because they're dissatisfied with the performance of President Biden. But I think, like I said before, a lot of Republicans are going to turn out because they're satisfied with how Governor Lee's been doing. I mean, it feels like every day you hear about some company from California, New York, moving to Tennessee. We've got Blue Oval City. We've got all these positive things that are going on in the state. And I think that's going to mean a big win for Governor Lee.
All right.
I kind of pushed back on that red wave comment, though. I don't know, but yeah.
And we'll talk more about that in just a moment. You know, later on, we'll also be talking about the upcoming election, including how the recent controversies surrounding the Shelby County Clerk's office could affect the outcome of that race. But coming up next on Informed Sources, a closer look at the selection process for Tennessee's next Attorney General. And here's a hint: you don't get a vote.